Good morning. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and tips to help you guys on your fitness journey. I'm going to get myself live on Instagram. Happy Monday. Coffee. I did not have my Ghost energy drink this morning, though. Let's see. All right, I think I am live. Just make sure I see somebody come on here. Give me a live person so I can make sure I'm live. All right, I'm live. All right, guys. Today, let me just start off with talking about some things. I don't know if you guys can relate to ever just being in a season where you just feel like a little bit burned out from things that you used to be really passionate about. And I kind of found myself in this place this weekend. And something that really resonated with me this morning that I thought would help you is sometimes we think that we're burned out, but it really is that we're not showing up the way that we want to be showing up, or maybe doing the things that we're wanting to be doing because we feel kind of forced, or maybe the work we're being told to do isn't in alignment with how we truly feel our best, and you almost feel like you're doing things mechanically. That's kind of how I was feeling, and it's just honestly, I just this morning realized I'm like, maybe I'm not burned out. Maybe it's just the way that I'm doing things. And of course, my cat's going to come up on the counter because every time I talk, he thinks I'm talking to him, and I'm not talking to him. So if you ever find yourself in that season, sometimes maybe just don't tell yourself you're burned out. Maybe honestly just take a step back and think about how you're approaching what it is that you're doing. And I already feel a level of pressure just kind of, I don't know, lifted off of my shoulders. Now, I will be honest. I also notice for me, whenever I start to feel really overwhelmed in life, it normally comes after I have not been getting enough sleep. And I had a couple of really bad nights of sleep Friday and Saturday night. And I don't know if it was just compounding, but yesterday I found myself just honestly in a really funky place. And then today, I'm feeling great. In fact, I hit a really, really, really hard, challenging leg session this morning, and I am already feeling it. I don't even know why I'm sitting down right now. I'm probably going to regret that in about 30 minutes. But let's just roll into today's topic. And one of the things that I was really reminding myself of is I don't think that I'm really talking about the things that I'm truly passionate about and what I actually do with my clients. Yes, I do talk a lot about, the obstacles we face and the different troubles you might be facing, but I don't really talk enough about the science behind things and the education behind things and the things that I'm going to be honest, I am like a nutrition nerd. I love geeking out about nutrition and how the body works and metabolism and hormones and all of that stuff. And I don't honestly talk about it enough. And if I'm really passionate about something, I'm going to start talking about it because that's what I want to help women with. That's what my goal is. So today's episode is really going to be for those of you guys that have been trying to figure out how to set your calories and your macros. Or maybe you've set calories and your macros in the past, but it didn't really quite stick. It worked temporarily. You were able to create some results, but you burned out. You kind of walked away from it. That's a whole nother episode, but I really want to give you guys an understanding as to how to use calories and macros to your advantage, because your calories and your macronutrients, the breakdown of those can really be a game changer for you to see results. Whether your goals are fat loss, whether your goals are optimizing for performance and metabolism, making sure that you're eating enough calories and macronutrients is important. Or if you are looking to build lean muscle tissue or ensure you are performing well in the gym, because there are different tweaks we're going to want to make based on that. But it starts off with, first and foremost, you have to have a base. And it's where I'll get people asking me about like pre and post workout and what strategies for fat loss. And it's like, well, you have to know where base is first. And that's what today's episode is going to be about, along with giving you guys a little bit of an understanding as to how to tweak things based on your specific goal of tracking food. Because the goal isn't to be tracking your food forever. The goal is to use tracking your food as a way for you to dial things in to figure out what it is that you're trying to achieve, or how to figure out how to achieve what it is you're looking to achieve. So let's get rolling into it. Let me just pull up my notes here. And if you guys have specific questions that pop up, if you are watching every day, hey Fergie Show, if you guys have any specific questions as you are watching about anything that I'm talking about, Please feel free to post it. Just make sure that you put a or a notation as to what it is you're referencing if I'm talking about something, because I'm going to look back at the comments after I get going. All right, so let's get into it. So if you're like me, if you've ever wanted to dial in how much you should be eating or have been questioning that, you're going to go online, right? So back in the day, it might have been google.com. Now you can go to ChatGPT. You're going to go to MyFitnessPal or whatever other food tracking app you're going to do. And typically you're like, okay, tell me how much I should be eating. And then what happens is you start tracking your food and you realize this isn't really making any sense based on what you're currently eating. Now you're judging every food decision that you've already created in a healthy way, and you feel kind of lost. And I get that. In fact, when I first started tracking my calories and my macros, I was freaking out because I was eating so much fat. And I had been eating that way for a long time. And now suddenly I was like, oh my God, it was like overnight, I felt like I was, freaking just literally the worst person in the world because I didn't realize how much fat I was consuming. And it made me feel really guilty. And that's really not the way it should be. We have to look at what our body is actually asking us for, and also what we actually want to achieve, so we can kind of get things together. So we don't need online calculators. We don't need MyFitnessPal. Well, we do need MyFitnessPal, but not for it to calculate your macros. In fact, all of those calculations are based off of algorithms that really aren't personalized. They're great baselines, but it's actually meant to be a baseline with the mindset that the person using it is going to actually be able to apply it to them. I think that MyFitnessPal gives us all a lot more credit that we are not robots, meaning I think that it thinks that we're going to be intuitive, and most people are not, right? We're just like, this is what we're supposed to do, so this is what we're going to do, right? So we don't need to even use that, all right? So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to break this down step by step. Step number one, okay? We're just going to take a baseline audit. You are going to take the next 7 days and you are literally just going to audit your food. We're going to audit our food. We're going to audit our daily weigh-ins, our daily weight. So we're going to weigh ourselves first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. We'll save that for a second because we're going to talk about that one. But let's talk about auditing our food. When we're auditing our food, we're not looking to make very specific changes to our nutrition right now based off of numbers. But the prerequisite to this is if you are ready for calories and macros, you should already have a solid foundation, which means you should be eating 3 to 6 times a day, structured meals and snacks, and making sure that you're consistent with that. You should be cooking most of your food at home. Yes, obviously, we all like to have our meals out and maybe have some convenience food. You should have an idea of eating around your workouts. You should have kind of a general idea of that. Along with, you want to be able to kind of pay attention to when you're more hungry, when you're less hungry. Here's where, if you have been tracking your food or you've been following a diet plan in the past, I'm honestly going to challenge you to kind of go back to just eating naturally, like you would expect any normal human being to eat, like a toddler, right? Like, are they eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner and a couple of snacks? That's kind of how I want you to think right now. And getting a baseline food audit, and if you have obviously veered off of natural tendencies to eat, that we're getting back to those natural tendencies. And then from there, we're going to be using a food scale, and we're going to be tracking all of our food in an app. When you guys are using a food scale for this food audit, what I'm going to recommend you do is not stress so much about the portion sizes of what you're eating, because I want it to be more natural. So I really like using the reverse weight method. Whenever I have a client do this, I will typically have them not look at the serving size and then portion based off of that. I will have them, let's just say, for instance, I just had a bowl of yogurt and granola, and I do the reverse weight method all of the time. And so I will put the container of yogurt on the scale, hit the 0 button. I'll pour out how much I want. I'll pop it back on the scale, and then it tells me I had 205 grams. I do the same thing with my granola. Put the granola on the thing, pour it on there to about my liking, and then put it back on there, and it tells me I had 70 grams. I don't want you changing anything right now. This is just to build a little bit of education on what your body is intuitively asking you for. Even if you decide that one of your snacks is going to be like a handful of nuts, right? Put the jar of nuts or whatever on the scale, hit 0, take your handful out, put it back on there, just to kind of see what it looks like for you to naturally be eating and not thinking so much about it, all right? You're going to track all of that stuff. Now, one thing that I will tell you when you are doing the food audit, this is also your opportunity to build confidence in using a food scale and tracking your food. So here's where we can talk about, like creating recipes and making sure that you are checking the nutrition facts of what you're logging to make sure that it's lining up. In fact, what if you're tracking your food but you're not tracking it correctly, like for instance, if you're logging chicken breast and it's telling you that you had 18 grams of protein, but you really had 36, or you had 36 grams of protein, but you only had 18, it's not going to be right. So you want to make sure what you're tracking, that you're actually building your database of accurate entries that you're going to be using going forward. So this first week is really an opportunity for you to remove the pressure off of where you want to go and just build some base habits of food tracking and get that food audit built in. Okay. Now, going into the daily weigh-ins, a lot of you guys like to focus so much on, all right, I don't want to think about the scale, it stresses me out, and you'll weigh yourself once, and then you don't weigh yourself for 2 weeks, and you're like, I'm at the same weight. But maybe you didn't see all the data points that happen in between there, and those data points in between there can give you a lot of feedback. In fact, it brings me back to being in like middle school. I forget which math class it was, but I remember learning like means and averages and all of that stuff. And it comes back to haunt us now in our adult life where we didn't think we would ever use that stuff. And here I am using it as a nutritionist. Okay, so we want to be looking at those daily weigh-ins just as data points and then getting a weekly average. Your 7-day average is your actual true weight. So if somebody were to ask you what your weight was and today you weighed in at 125, that's maybe what your weight was today, but maybe your average for the last 7 days was 123. Your actual weight would be 123. Not that I want you guys to get too nitpicky on that when telling somebody your weight, but when we're looking at changes, because 123 to 125 is a 2-pound change. And when we are looking at being intentional with our food, that is a pretty significant change. So we want to look at just getting some basic feedback. All right. So now that you've got your 7-day audit, we are going to use this to calibrate. All right. So we're going to use this audit and now we're going to calibrate things to make sure that you are understanding how to build the plan you need to get to your calorie needs and your macronutrient needs. So giving you a little bit of a crash course. And if you guys want a full breakdown of this in like a course format, just let me know. I think I might just simplify this and turn it into a little course for you guys. If that's something that you're interested in, give me a high five or something in the comments and I'll make sure I put that together. Okay. But first and foremost, you have to understand that your macronutrients are what make up your calories. Okay. So, protein has 4 calories per gram. So if I've had 100 grams of protein, I would have 100 times 4. I've had 400 calories. Okay. Carbohydrates also have 4 calories per gram. If I've had 100 carbs, I've had 400 calories. And then fats have 9 calories per gram. So if I've had not 100 grams of fat, I've had 900 calories. Okay. So that is like what you need to understand from how calories and macros work together. In fact, I focus more on macronutrients because your body, while calories are the biggest puller or lever for weight change, your macronutrients and the quality of your food sources for those macronutrients is actually what your body needs to look and feel your best. Okay, so I don't like clients focusing on calories. I like them focusing more on the nutrition contents of their food and making sure that the sources of their macronutrients are coming from good sources where they're getting more than just like, I don't want you just getting carbohydrates. I want you getting B vitamins and iron and zinc. I don't want you just getting protein. I want you getting selenium and I want you getting some omega-3s and I want you getting some of those other healthy food, healthy nutrients that are going to come from that, right? Same thing with fats. I don't want you just getting fats from, a Reese's peanut butter cup. I want you actually getting omega-3s is another one. Getting more of those things, because that's how your body's going to actually feel better. Okay. Now let's get into macros. So you've got your base audit, right? You've got your 7-day audit, and your app will also give you like an average for the last 7 days. It'll tell you what your average calorie intake was. It will tell you what your average carbs, fats, and proteins were, whether you use MyFitnessPal or Macros First. The two I would recommend, I'm going to be honest, are MyFitnessPal or Macros First. I use Macros First myself. If you want to try Macros First Premium for free, you can use code FitBodyRX, 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 and you will be able to use that for free. I should put that in the show notes too for you guys. Jacob is awesome. He is very helpful. If you guys ever have questions about using the app, I met him a couple of years ago at a nutrition summit, and he was kind enough to offer me a free year to try out the app, and I loved it. And I've been using it ever since, and that was like 2023 or 2024. I don't even remember. Okay, so your app is going to give you that. So you know what your average calories are for the last 7 days. You know what your average protein was, your average carbs, and your average fats. Okay, I broke down a little bit of how your calories come from your protein, carbs, and fats. Now let's talk about your needs. Okay, first things first, we're not going to make a big change in calories just yet. Okay, we're first going to be assessing. And the first thing that you're going to want to assess, and I'm just going to kind of pull up my my own tracker just so I can kind of walk you guys through this. And I'm going to go to my dashboard here. All right, so let's see. Let's see. I was looking for my average food log. Okay, well, I guess I don't really need this. Oh, yes, there we go. I found it. Okay. All right, so the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at your overall calories and your averages on protein, carbs, and fats. First thing that you want to have, and this is going to be whether your goals are fat loss, your goals are building muscle, or your goals are to optimize just to ensure that you are feeling your best. And when I say feeling your best, I'm talking about those of you guys with any kind of hormonal stuff going on, metabolic stuff, gut stuff. It honestly does start with making sure that you're getting enough nutrients. I promise you, a lot of your gut dysfunction, a lot of your hormone issues, a lot of your sleep issues, a lot of your blood sugar issues, all of that stuff will get better if you're just eating enough food in balance. Okay, so food quality, yes, but dialing in the amounts matters too. Okay, so the first thing is protein. You're going to set your protein somewhere between 0.8 and 1 gram per pound of body weight. I think that 1 gram is just easy, and or goal body weight. So if you are, 300 pounds, if you're very overweight or obese, you don't need to be eating 300 grams of protein, right? We can set that, I always like to give very obese or overweight clients, think somebody, because I work with enough populations, but like at a healthy BMI, is like a good place for you to start. Somewhere in that range. So like where would an optimal BMI be for you, and shoot for that in protein, or using the 0.8 to 1 grams off of that. If you are in a, you're trying to build muscle, you might want to shoot a little bit higher if you are significantly underweight. But honestly, 0.8 to 1 gram per pound is a great place to start. More than that, you don't, especially if you're in a fat loss phase, you're just stealing nutrients from carbs and fats. So I honestly wouldn't really recommend more than that. I think that it's crazy how many people come to me and they're eating so much freaking protein that they don't need. Now, when I say that, it's also, I look at the sources of their protein, because some people can be getting protein from a lot of different sources besides actual protein just based on their diet. And it's where I honestly think that people that are vegan or vegetarian don't even realize how they can be totally successful without having to eat animal protein. But that's for another episode too. Okay, so 0.8 to 1 grams per pound of body weight is your protein needs. From there, we're going to set your fats to somewhere between 20 and 30% of overall calorie intake. So here's where you should be assessing things. You should be looking at your last 7 days and saying, okay, where is my fat falling? Am I in that 20 to 30% range? And seeing where you fall naturally more to. You don't have to make a big significant change. If you find that you're closer to 30% and you're feeling really good there, you can stay at that. And if you're, whatever, closer to 20%, or if your fats are like 35%, here's where we're going to kind of start to tailor things back a little bit. So you've got your protein set, your fats are going to be somewhere between 20 to 30% of your overall calories, and then your carbohydrates should make up the remaining amount. Okay. That is in an app, so easy for you to do. I can break it down for you if you want to do the math, but it's so much easier if you're just in the app, because even in like MyFitnessPal, you can go there and you can look at your overall calories. Let's just say you're averaging 2,100 calories. And then you can go into the place where you can set your macros, go ahead and set your protein at whatever your protein needs are. So let's just say your goal protein is 130 to 150 grams of protein. Go ahead and find the percentage that puts you at that number, or pay for premium if you want to, which, by the way, if you're using macros first, You don't have to pay for premium to do that. Set your fats at that 20 to 30% range, and then the calories will come from the rest. Okay. So that will help you guys just kind of understanding how to set your macros. Now, we haven't adjusted your calories yet. We're just setting up the ranges for where they need to be. Now, the next thing that we're going to be doing is we have our 7-day audit. You have a basic breakdown of where your macros should be based off of that 7-day audit on your calorie intake. And now we're going to be just manipulating these calories and macronutrients by 10 to 20% off of your baseline based off of your feedback. Okay. This is why it's so important that you are truly going off of intuition that first 7 days. Because if you are micromanaging your food and you are being really careful and you are under eating, it's going to make the step for fat loss harder. Okay. Or I shouldn't say it's not going to really help you if you're in maintenance, because we're going to be increasing anyways. But regardless, we want to make sure that we're watching trends and setting this up correctly. Okay. So if your goals are fat loss, your goal is to create a calorie deficit. One thing I will say about this is if this is your first time tracking food and you haven't been tracking your food before, I would give yourself another week of doing exactly what you did the first week, but using those ranges that you set. So before actually taking anything away, I would actually give yourself one more week there. If appetite was regulated, you felt really good, and you just needed to tweak some things. Before changing anything, just start there, okay? If you know that you're like, no, I definitely know that I could probably pull back. I know I was just kind of definitely eating. This is where you can drop your calorie intake by 10 to 20%. Where do we pull calories from? This is the cool thing, okay? You got the carb phobic people that are like, carbs are bad, blah, 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 blah. Cut out the carbs, eat the fats. And you got the fat phobic people that are like, I'm team no fat, high carb. I am actually going to tell you that carbohydrates are preferred in the fat loss phase because they do spare muscle. So I would tell you guys, for most of you guys, that I would go veer on the lower fat, higher carb, but I would say 20% of your overall calorie intake from fats is probably the lowest you would need to go. Okay. So you're just manipulating your calories by pulling about 10 to 20% off of your intake from your maintenance numbers and going ahead and setting your deficit there. So let's just say your maintenance numbers were 2,100, and I'm going to start with 10% times 0.10. That's 210 calories that I'm going to be pulling. You can pull half and half, right? I can go 105 from fats and 105 from carbs and call it a day. 100 calories from carbs is 25 carbs. 100 calories from fats is about a little over 9 grams of fat. So call it 10 and 25, right? I can, if maybe my fat intake was 75, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to 60 to 65 fat. Maybe your carbs are at 225. So I'm going to go to like 190 to 200 carbs. It is that simple. That simple. I'll talk about why simple gets harder in the future, but like right now, it's that simple. Okay. If your goals are to find maintenance. So if you are doing this and you're like, yeah, I have been tracking my food and I know I have been under eating. Like I can't go any lower than I'm at right now. And you know this, I don't want you to think that somebody else told you this. You know this because you feel this. You don't feel as strong. You feel like you're like, I'm just kind of flat. And honestly, the thought of lowering my calories stresses me out, right? You know that. So if that's you, optimize at maintenance, okay? We're still tracking our weight daily, whether your goals are fat loss, building, or maintenance. You are tracking your weight daily because that's the feedback that we're going to be using, or that's one of the pieces of feedback, along with how you're feeling. So appetite, energy, digestion, all of that stuff. Okay, optimizing at maintenance is the same thing. We are simply going to add 10 to 20% to your calorie intake. Okay, so if we took away to be in a deficit, we're going to add a little bit. And this also goes for in a surplus too. From there, you're going to take another 7 days of hitting those ranges. Okay, so if we increased by 10 to 20%, we're going to stay there for 7 days. And we're going to monitor how we feel, our appetite, energy, progress, all of that stuff. Okay. You're going to essentially, when we're looking at setting up maintenance calories, you're going to keep watching your weight. You're going to keep paying attention to feedback. It should not take you more than 3 to 4 weeks max to find true maintenance, fat loss numbers, or your surplus numbers. But I would give yourself 3 to 4 weeks to actually falling into a groove with those things. The longer you have been dieting, the longer it might take if you're, lack of better terms, pussyfooting your way into the reverse part of it, because that should not take that long. You likely are eating more calories even when you're under eating than you realize. It just isn't showing up on a daily basis. It might be that you eat 1,000 calories 4 days a week and then have a couple of drinks and maybe you're grabbing random snacks. Okay, this is where if you just know your numbers and you trust and you stay consistent with this, you will be able to have control over your nutrition. Okay, so that's what we're doing. Now, step 3, we've kind of started to build our plan. We are consistently tracking trends. We're tracking our food. We're not half in and half out. We're taking this seriously. We're making sure that we're looking at things that are showing up for us. And this is where obviously I can go into where coaching comes in, because this is where a lot of people struggle. They struggle because it is this simple, but it's not really that simple. It's not really that simple when there's little things that happen that make consistency very hard. Okay. We want to be watching feedback. Feedback is something that you likely have ignored for so long. You don't even know what feedback is anymore because you're so used to just knowing that you had this goal and you are willing to do it no matter how bad you feel, right? Like, I think we're all conditioned to believe that, struggling through hunger is a sign of like discipline, or that's a good thing. It's not always a good thing, right? So, or just being low on energy is because you're tired, is because you're stressed, when it might just be because you need more food. All right. So we want to be taking a look at all of that stuff. All right. And the goal is that once you're into a place of momentum, you just keep going. So the maintenance piece is a little bit different, because if you're in maintenance, I'm going to talk about that first, is once you find yourself, this is like you just trying to optimize, you don't have to track your food forever. Now, the goal is that if I, like, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you have strong foundation, or you have a strong foundation, you have strong systems, you should be pretty good at taking taking out the food scale again. Like, it should be, you kind of know. That's why I like the reverse weight method, because it makes that very easy. You're less likely to get into a place where you're overeating or under eating if you've done that a little bit more flexibly, for lack of better terms. Yes, you're doing it accurately, but you're doing it in a way that's not so, this is what I'm supposed to have. It's, this is what I actually want to have. And I'm just making sure that I'm keeping myself accountable to that. So if you're in maintenance, great. You've honestly, hopefully found yourself in a place where you're like, wow, this is great. I feel like I'm eating way more food. I didn't realize how much I was under eating, or now I can kind of see where I need to be. If you, maybe you are somebody that was trying to be in a fat loss phase, and every time you try and drop, you're like, I just can't do it. Maybe for you, it's, maybe you are eating at maintenance right now. And what's funny enough is I honestly think that if that's you, if you ate at maintenance long enough, I think that your body would start to burn body fat, as long as you're being consistent with your movement. As long as you're being consistent with your movement, you're being consistent with your calorie intake. It might not be the fast progress on the scale, but if you are eating at maintenance, true maintenance, what you figured out here, I do think that eventually your body will start to burn body fat, even if you were just slightly under eating. But we'll talk about that later. Or in a different episode, I should say, because I want to keep this episode focused on this. So if you're in maintenance, good for you. Great work. If you are in a surplus for building muscle, okay, this is where I'm at right now, actually. Couple of things here. The weight of weight gain, I want to say you definitely don't want to be, well, you shouldn't be aggressive at either end of the spectrum, but there's really no benefit to gaining a bunch of body fat if you know that you're just going to end up wanting to cut again. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So you're better off just like being a little bit modest or moderate in your surplus. I wouldn't really go more than like 300 to 500 calories above maintenance, unless you have a significant reason to be building a lot of weight right now. So I think that's probably going to be a good enough place. But you have to watch trends, because if your weight's not going up, I would say about half a pound to 1 pound on average per week. That's probably a good rate. And that's actually pretty freaking quick. Like, that's pretty quick. I think 2 pounds a month is good for like a lean build if you're staying consistent with that. So I would just really be committed to that. And then if this is you, what I would recommend doing is doing it for a period of time and then dropping back to maintenance. I wouldn't go into a deficit. I think that's where I don't like people doing this bulk and cut, bulk and cut. It's not, in fact, there's plenty of studies out there that show you gaining a bunch of body fat just to retain 1 pound of muscle is not worth it. So I'd rather see you be committed to like, okay, for the next 12 months, I'm going to, go for 12 weeks being in that building phase, and I'm going to put on about, 6 pounds, and then I'm going to go up maintenance for a little bit, and your weight might drop a little bit because if you put on a little bit of muscle, you might naturally be in a little bit of a deficit, right? But we're not cutting specifically, we're just cutting back from the surplus, and that typically will cause a little bit of fat loss. And you're just cycling through that until you feel like you're like, okay, now I'm feeling really good. If there's other reasons why you're in a surplus, so if you're significantly underweight or you have other health reasons, there might be some different indications for where we might do things a little bit differently. So, but for most of you guys out there, it's like, but Cheryl, I'm on the other end of the spectrum and I would like to lose body fat, aka or body recomp, or you have 50 pounds. I don't care how much weight you have to lose. If you have extra body fat, your goal is fat loss. Even if you're like, but I really want to build muscle too, you're going to be building muscle too. In fact, if you have more than 20 pounds to lose, do not worry about losing your muscle tissue unless you are being aggressive with it. I don't recommend anybody being aggressive with it. I think if you just do this the right way, you should never feel like you need a break from it. You should feel like you're doing the right things. And that's what I'm going to go into next. So if you're in a fat loss phase where a lot of you guys are like, this is what I'm looking for, I want to set my calories up and then be able to get into a fat loss phase. Now we are looking at how do we make adjustments along the way. All right. So let's just say you found your maintenance calories, you put into deficit, and things are going smooth. And you're like, I'm dropping weight. I feel really good. Expectations here for fat loss. Again, I would go with a 0.5 to 1 pound per week, 1 to 2 pounds per week if you have significantly more weight to lose, or if you're being a little bit more aggressive. I think 2 pounds a week is an aggressive deficit. So from there, if that's you, okay, we're watching trends, we're paying attention to feedback. We're also paying attention to things going on in life, right? In everything, but in life, especially with fat loss, because being in a deficit is significantly more stressful than being at maintenance or being in a surplus. You're adding a stressor to your body by forcing an adaptation physically from your body. It's essentially, it's training. You're training your body to do something differently. Same thing in the surplus for building, but your training is in the gym. With this, you're actually training your body to use stored body fat. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to things outside of the gym that could be being impacted by being in a deficit. If you find yourself having a lot of food noise, if you're finding yourself very stressed, we want to know like, okay, there's things that are going to happen that are going to make it hard for us, but also paying attention to how it's showing up in the gym and how you're feeling, right? If you're starting to feel very anxious. A lot of people, okay, only know how to do one thing when they hit a plateau. It's, I need to just drop calories. That's not always the right thing. In fact, I think that sometimes we need to do that. But the first thing is always experimenting with just going back to maintenance for either a couple of days or maybe a week and not being in a rush, because sometimes that's exactly what your body needed. I would much rather see you do that than to just keep dropping calories. And now you're like, all right, I'm on poverty calories and macros and I feel like crap and I'm going to burn out. So I think it's more important to take breaks. I don't, I'll get questions about like, how many weeks should I be in a deficit? I'm like, there's no prescription for that. Like, I don't care what any coach says. You have to go by how you feel. How are you feeling? Again, if you're more aggressive, then yeah, you're going to want to like set like a timestamp on it because you're not going to feel great. But for most of you guys, it's not worrying so much about the micromanaging of your deficit and paying attention instead to how do I actually feel? Am I showing up well in my life? Okay. And then, and that's kind of the simplicity of nutrition for fat loss, maintenance, surplus. It truly is optimizing there. Now, one other thing I will say is that when we're talking about calorie and macronutrient needs, it's important to look at this as this is one side of the equation. Okay, so the other side of the equation is your training, your stress, your sleep, your non-exercise based activity, again, digestion, so the types of food you're consuming. If there's variables in this stuff, then this stuff being consistent might not be as helpful. you want to make sure that you have consistency on both ends of the spectrum, at least as a baseline, right? Like you might know, you might not always get in 6 workouts a week, but you know that baseline for you is 3 workouts and 8K steps a day. And you typically get 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night, right? You know that that's baseline for you. Your foods are pretty similar most days. You might have 1 or 2 meals out. That's the kinds of stuff that you want to make sure that are pretty simple or pretty consistent from day to day. And that's going to allow you to also have a whole nother lever to pull. So going back into that, whether it's a surplus, whether it's deficit, if you're in a surplus and you're like not gaining and you're like, man, I just can't eat any more food, it might be looking at, okay, are you a hyper responder where you're just moving more and you need to maybe slow down a little bit on that? I know that that's me. I don't even realize that I start to fidget more. I start to move more. I start to have more energy when I'm in a surplus because I have more energy available. Vice versa, if you're in a deficit and you find yourself more sluggish, it might be easier for you to actually increase step count and do a little bit more low intensity cardio versus pulling back on food. So just looking at that, you have other levers to pull. I'm really just covering the nutrition aspect of things. And then kind of looking at recalibrating for maintenance and maintaining. This would kind of be, let's just say you're like, man, I'm feeling really good. How do I shift back into maintenance? The first thing is obviously kind of calibrating just like you did in the beginning. If you were trying to find maintenance, is always going back to that tool. But then it's also looking at like maintaining beyond your just maintenance phase. It's okay, do I want to be tracking my food? Do I need to be tracking my food? Do I eat pretty much the same thing every day? It's always having some calorie awareness, but also knowing that you don't have to be tracking your food to still be consistent if you built structure and routine into your day to day that is in line with you being able to maintain without having to. That's the goal. Like in maintenance, I don't have to micromanage my food because my food's pretty similar from day to day. If I made a bunch of different meals, I would probably have to be a little bit more mindful of what I'm doing. It's also why I think keeping meals pretty simple most times is helpful for people and also a lot easier for you to implement into a busy life. So, if you guys have any questions about anything that I covered today, or if you would like to honestly have a course built around this, I would love to be able to support you guys. And if that's you, I will definitely put that together for you guys. And it looks like somebody already said yes, that would be helpful. So, I will put together a little course on this. Why not? Because I love doing that kinds of stuff. Why not just add to my plate? No, honestly, like I said, I'm just kind of feeling good about just doing what I feel like doing right now. So that's all I got for today, guys. I know that I typically talk pretty fast. So if you guys have any questions about anything specifically, if you're watching the recording, please feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email. You can send me a message on Instagram, or I'll be honest, I am really bad about being on Facebook. I probably have at least 10 messages to check on there right now that I have not checked yet. But feel free to reach out to me, and I will talk to you guys all on the next episode. Bye.